Math Padawans, it's Mrs. Angel with today's lesson on Intro to Integer Expressions, Start and Change. So in order to start today's lesson, you have to make sure that you have your CC3 student workbook, and we are going to be working on Unit 1, Page 1 to start. So make sure that you have this, because if you don't, it's going to be really hard for you to follow along with the lesson. So grab your notes and let's get started.
Okay, so before we get into today's lesson, let's take a look at our learning targets. Learning target 1, I can classify an integer expression as a sum or difference. Learning target 2, I can simplify integer expressions. Learning target 3, I can describe integer expressions using math vocabulary. And learning target 4, I can create integer expressions that represent real-world problems or a given criteria. In this video, we are going to be looking at specifically learning target 1 and a little bit of learning target 2. Down below, you have all of the important vocabulary from this unit. And in order to understand class discussions, instructions on worksheets, and any homework assignments in this class, you must know the meaning of these terms eventually. Now, there are quite a few terms on this list. So what I would like you to do is something called a star check question mark. So going through this list, if you know the meaning of a word and you can define it, you're going to put a star next to that word. If you know the word and you've heard it before, but you're not sure if you can define it, you're going to put a check next to that word. And if you have no idea what that word means, or at least you don't know what it means in the context of what we're talking about, you'll put a question mark next to the word. As I'm looking here, the first word is integer. Maybe I don't know the exact definition of integer, but I've heard it before. So let's say I'm going to put a check there because I've heard of it before, but I'm not sure. Now, positive, I'm pretty sure I can define positive. So I'm going to put a star next to positive, and then I'm going to write my definition for that word in the space. Then maybe I can define negative. And then I get to classify, and I'm like, what does classify mean? I'm going to put a question mark there. Now, your paper might look completely different. It might be full of question marks and checks. And please don't go and look up the definition of these words. This is just based on what you already know. So take a moment now before we begin today's lesson to star, check, or question mark all of the words on this list.
So let's start with the word positive. Positive means any integer that is greater than 0. Now, on a number line, it's important to note that that is anything that is to the right of 0. So all of these numbers are what we would call positive integers. Now, it's important also to remember that as you move to the right on a number line, your integers become more positive, and that will come in handy later on when we actually start diagramming. So for example, like 10 is more positive than 5 because it's to the right of 5 on a number line. So we do associate positive with being to the right of 0, okay? Negative would be the opposite of that. Negative integers are less than 0. On a number line, that would be everything to the left of 0. These are all of our negative integers, and they have that little dash sign in front of them to show that they have a negative value. Now, just like positive, as you move to the left on a number line, your integers become more negative or less positive. And again, that's important to remember later on. So this is associated with being to the left of 0. Now that leaves 0. Is 0 positive or negative? Actually, it's neither. 0 has no value. Think about it. If you have $0, it doesn't mean you have money, and it doesn't mean you owe money. It just means you have nothing. So 0 is not positive or negative. 0 just has no value. Okay, so notice here where it says classifying integer expression. So to classify means to put into a category. So what we're doing is we're taking these integer expressions, these number sentences with these numbers, and we're going to either put them into the category of sum or difference. So if it is a sum, that means that the expression contains addition. Or it's a lot easier to think of it as we say the word plus. If you are saying the word plus, or you see this symbol here, when you see that symbol there, you are reading an expression that is a sum. In a difference, you are reading an expression that contains subtraction. Or in other words, you are saying the word minus, and you're looking for that symbol right there. Now, the hard part with a difference is that that symbol that I drew is used also to represent negative. So we have to be a little bit careful with that. Let's go ahead and look at numbers 1 and 2, and then you'll do the other ones on your own. If I read it out loud, number 1 would read 4 plus 10. So again, because I'm saying the word plus, we would classify this expression as a sum. It goes into the sum category. Let's read number 2. Number 2 reads 6 minus 5. So because I am saying the word minus, 6 minus 5 would go into the difference category. So it's all about what are you saying when you read it out. Sum is you're saying plus, and difference you're saying minus. Go ahead and try 3 through 8 on your own. So it's pretty simple. If you say plus, that categorizes it as a sum, and if you say minus, that's a difference. Let's move on here to the bottom of this page and wrap up these notes. So if we read the directions here, it says to diagram sums and differences. Now, to diagram means we're actually going to do this math on the number line. We're actually going to make a picture of what these expressions represent. Now, there are 3 parts to a diagram. There is the starting value, there is the change, and then there's where you end up. And where you end up is called the value of the expression. I'm just going to kind of squeeze that one in there. So let's talk about these. So the starting value is the first number in the expression. I'm going to write that down for you. So it's whatever you're reading first. So let's take a look here at example 1. What number do you say first when you read example 1? Example 1 is negative 10 minus 2. Notice how I said negative 10 first? That means that's our starting value, and that's the first number I'm going to find on the number line. And I like to put just a big line on negative 10 to show that is where my journey starts. The second part of every expression is called the change. And the change is basically what's happening to your starting value, because you're not going to start at negative 10, subtract 2, and end back at negative 10. That's not going to work. You're going to end somewhere else. Now, the change has both a direction. You're either going to go right or left, and it has a distance. You're going to travel a certain number of places, almost like a board game. You're going to be moving in some direction. So my change here would read minus 2. That is my change. And it gives me information. If I'm minus 2, I'm subtracting positive 2. That means I'm taking away positive value. And to take away positive value means my answer is going to become more negative. So I'm moving to the left 2 in this expression. So starting at negative 10, I'm moving to the left 1 and 2. And that brings us to the final part of our diagram, which is where we ended up. We ended up at negative 12. I'm going to put a box around it because that shows that that's where I ended up. And that is called the value of the expression. So in other words, what is negative 10 minus 2? That's negative 12. Let's take a look at example 2. So example 2, what's the first number that we read in the expression? We read the number -5. So that is our starting value. Let's find -5. There it is on the number line. The change is what's going to happen in -5. I'm either going to move to the right or I'm going to move to the left. So it looks like here the change is plus 12, and I'm adding positive 12, which means my value is going to become more positive, and I'm headed in the right direction. So starting at -5, I'm going to move 12 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And where did we end up? We ended up at, it looks like 5, 6, positive 7. So I'm going to put a box around my answer because that is the ending value of this expression. In other words, what is -5 plus 12? That would be positive 7. 2. So that's called diagramming. So again, you have to show where you started, the direction that you're going and how far, in other words, the change, and where do you end up? What's the value of this expression? So here we go. Going through this list, we definitely covered positive and negative, classify, sum and difference, start, change, and value. So when you have time on your own, if you want to go in and add some definitions, it just might help you remember them a little bit easier. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.